You're listening to Forecast, the marketing podcast for professional services leaders. If you're looking to generate more leads, win more deals, and take your firm to the next level, this show is your shortcut. Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Ahmed Munawar. Great conversation for you today with Anthony English. Anthony is somebody who I've gotten to know pretty well over the past few months. Love the work that he's doing. Love the vibe that he's giving off. He's so helpful. He's so generous. And he's got some fascinating perspectives to share with us here today on the show. Anthony tells us a story of how the work that he used to do as an IT specialist pretty much dried up overnight with the financial crisis of 2008. And Anthony found himself, without a job, without any work to do, and without any real prospects. And he had to go through this process of pretty much reinventing himself and rebuilding his entire career from scratch. So in this episode, Anthony shares the steps that he took, the process that he went through, and the lessons that he learned along the journey. I think you're going to love this conversation and you're going to learn a ton from it. Show notes are at forecast.fm/English. That's forecast.fm/English. Before I let you go, if you haven't yet checked out my daily marketing podcast called Marketing Out Loud, I would love for you to give that a listen. Every single day, I bring you a tip, a story, an insight, or something that I'm learning from building my own marketing practice and helping my clients build successful consulting and professional services businesses. It's 5 minutes a day, it's raw, it's unfiltered, and it's from the trenches, and I think you're going to love it. Check it out at marketingoutloud.fm or search for Marketing Out Loud wherever you get your podcasts. With that, here is Anthony English. Anthony, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's a delight.
Early in the morning as well.
Yeah, look, it's 5:30 in the morning here in Sydney, which is great. Nice and fresh, vigorous. Well.
Yeah, well, you strike me as an early riser because I would be barely functional at that time of the morning, but good for you.
Yeah, I'm very lucky because I do a lot of work with people in different time zones, and so it's an advantage to me. I'm actually both a night owl and an early bird. So
what does that mean? That means you don't sleep at all?
No. I do sleep. I just not heavily into the whole 8 hours thing. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So listen, Anthony, why don't you kick things off for us by giving us a little bit of your backstory?
Sure. Well, I was an IT specialist working on really high-end systems, so for big banks, those sort of things. I moved into contracting in 2007 when everybody was doing it. And I kind of survived working through agents. And the market moved downhill, and I realized I'm going to have to do something different in my career. Because as an IT guy, I was, as I say, top of my very, very well known in my field, but I did not know how to sell myself. I didn't know how to price. And so all of those things I had to go through this huge learning curve.
And so what did you do in those early days when you had those struggles and you realized there was so much you didn't know about business and pricing? How did you overcome those challenges?
Oh, well, first of all was that I avoided it altogether. I insisted on working through agents who I've now realized were themselves not very strong on selling to their clients. They weren't even strong on pricing. It's not like they were taking a great big cut themselves. I knew what they were charging, and I thought they're not really handling. Well, they didn't really handle the clients terribly well. I mean, they gave great service and so on, but I thought, well, if they're doing this and they've got a business, why can't I? So my intention was still to continue with all of my IT work, and I've completely dropped that now. Yeah.
So was there a period where you were offering IT services through your own business without going to the agents?
Yes, I was doing that. And once again, I was following pretty much their same pattern where, okay, we charge an hourly rate, and there was no guaranteed hours. There was no no kind of trusted advisor agreement. Like they would, clients would call me anytime, and do I really charge for this? Do I charge for this email? It sounds like I was going to be penny pinching doing that, and yeah, it was a really really bad model. And I realized I I need to learn. I need to learn this stuff. I was frightened of sales, even frightened of running my own business, and I just did not have any confidence there and especially with pricing. I thought, like discounting. There were all kinds of things that I was doing completely wrong.
Sure.
So,
And
bit of
how did you, because I think a lot of the clients that you worked with, I'm assuming, were used to that agent model, right? The agency model where they go to one agency, they hire all their IT specialists or whatever else they need through the agencies. How did you break out of
yeah,
that mold?
yeah. Well, it broke away from me really. I mean, the market in my particular field of expertise was going down. It was a little smaller than the mainframe systems. I was very well known in my field, but the market itself was well, it just wasn't there, and so I had a choice. Said, okay, I either learn another IT skill and try and keep up with whatever is the latest buzzword, whatever the latest thing is in the industry. But I realized that was getting very, very commoditized. There was a lot of outsourcing to cheaper countries, and I thought, how am I going to compete? I've got 20, 25 years experience in my field. That's what I know extremely well. But am I really going to try and learn how to design websites or some other field, move to learning how to move to the cloud? What am I going to do? And I realized that my gift, if you like, was not more technical stuff. It was something different.
And so what happened to what happened to that market? Was it just the technology was outdated or replaced by something else? Like what happened there?
Well, once again, it was probably a commoditization of the market. People moving to more to open source models. There were some other things in the market that, yeah, well, it just let's say the market moved on. The technology itself was still very good, but the market, shall we say, just moved on. But what was very interesting was that I had to move on, not to chase a new IT market. I went in a completely different direction. I was forced to, and now I absolutely love it.
So let's stop there for a second because I think this is an important lesson. You spend 25 years working in an industry, building a name for yourself in a particular field, in a particular area. And
Yeah.
you've, like you said, you made a name for yourself. And then all of a sudden that market disappears. I mean, maybe it wasn't sudden, but over time the market disappears and you're left with this kind of, existential crisis on your hands. What was that like?
Well, the financial crisis as well. And so, yeah, look, it was an emotional roller coaster, as you can imagine, because you're scrambling for work, just happy to accept anything that comes across your desk. Try and redefine yourself, learn WordPress at a very basic level, chasing totally the wrong market. I just made every possible mistake, and I realized, with having worked on some very, very big companies. I was working, as I say, on banks and manufacturing systems, and generally I was working. I worked on in a mining company. They had a really critical change to be done. I'd never heard of them, or they'd never heard of me, and they called me in at the last minute. And at the last minute, I suppose we had 2 months to go, and we had 60 people working in the office through the night on the night we went live. So you can imagine we had teams of people. We had people from all different companies, and we just had to work together. It all went it went through very well, but it made me realize, goodness, I'm not just working on IT. I'm talking to payroll people here. I'm talking to DBAs, the database administrators. I'm talking to legal people. I'm talking to people who've got like no idea of the technology, and I'm not talking technical. And that was a big aha moment for me.
Okay. And so where did you take it from there?
Well, I've actually gone into business coaching because I've had to learn all of these things that I didn't know, that I thought I could never learn. And I thought it's actually not that hard. I can see other technical people, uh, or I see this with legal people, with accountants, and so on. And what they do is they've got their superpower. So here's a little exercise, Ahmad, that I might that I recommend you do. Draw a circle and say, well, what is my superpower? So when I say superpower, people get a feel they might feel a little bit embarrassed, a bit hesitant. I don't have a superpower. Yes, you do. Okay. So that's something that you do. There's some reason that you're here in the world and you are doing something in your field of expertise. So that, that could be copywriting, that could be, let's say it's databases, it could be a BI, so business intelligence specialist, whatever it is, that's your superpower. Okay. And that's all very interesting and good. But here's the second thing, is that if you take a secondary superpower, you're going to find that crossover. So a secondary superpower might be there. It might be some particular industry that you know especially well, or there may be some kind of personality angle that you have, some kind of human dimension that you have that people often comment on, and you'll probably miss it. You'll really have to ask somebody else, what is my, you can't go around asking what's my secondary superpower, but what am I good at? And they will say something like, look, even though you're an IT specialist, you really explain things really, really simply. Or you may be somebody who's great at analytics, so really crunching the numbers and so on, but you've also worked in, say, in the real estate industry, in, say, real estate residential sales. So what you can do is rather than simply say, look, here is my specialty, my first superpower, I've got this crossover into this field as well. And that's where your strength, and that really, really narrows your focus, which is great.
So I guess a pretty common positioning strategy, certainly one that both you and I employ, is expertise or superpower in your terms, combined with a market or industry focus. So my expertise is marketing, communication, storytelling, strategy, and my industry focus is consulting and professional services, because that's where the lion's share of my professional experience lies. In your case, it's business coaching. And obviously you'll articulate your superpower better than I can, but I'm just, at a high level business coaching. And your secondary superpower, at least from my perspective, seems to be IT specialist, because that's your experience. Are there other secondary superpowers that might be outside of an industry market focus?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. So, for example, I'm a very fast writer. I've written for IT magazines, but I started writing maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I started writing non-IT things for IT magazines about how to sell yourself. Or I wrote an article one time that got published in a US-based magazine saying that why I love unhappy customers. And so, so really just being able to take a particular angle to be able to you will often find, especially in, well, it's not only in IT, you would find it with lawyers, with accountants, they've got an amazing ability sometimes to grasp a small part of some industry that's totally outside their field. And so when I say a superpower, people may be uncomfortable with that language, but the idea is that there is some merging of at least two circles. That could be a market vertical, so it could be, for you, it's consulting, which is still very, very broad, or it could be marketing, but it could be some kind of angle, something unique that you bring, which is not anything really to do with your primary expertise. And so what that really comes down to, so I had to learn this lesson. I had some absolutely wonderful mentors, and I still do. And I absolutely recommend that you work with people who are outside of outside of your field. Not so much working with your peers, that can help, but you're not selling to your peers. And in fact, what you're trying to do is really to start to talk the language of people who don't understand what you do. Um, and so that's really a turning point for me. Uh, so what you're doing is you're what I recommend you do is you start to speak in terms that the business owner cares about, or the sales manager, or whoever it is that you're speaking to, who may not care at all about your technology or about your professional field.
So how does this superpower exercise help you speak in the customer's language?
Well, that's the secret, is that you're articulating. Well, I'll give you an example. It's so important to speak in the customer's language. You know that in marketing, and we all understand that. But let's say that you are. I'll give an example from a field that probably you or I don't understand at all. Okay, I'm going to pretend that I'm a dentist. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Ahmad, I'm a dentist. I've been doing dentistry for 20 years. I use the latest equipment. I'm up on the very latest methodology in the latest developments in dentistry. I use absolutely wonderful, the best anesthetic, so you don't feel a thing.
Yeah. My tooth hurts. Can you fix it?
No, but start. Then, no, well, even before your tooth hurts. All right, so I've spoken about all of my expertise. I don't even know that your tooth hurts. And then I say, so, Ahmad, would you like some root canal surgery?
That sounds terrible. No, thank you.
Okay. Because what I'm doing, and now that's pretty much the way, like I'm very active on LinkedIn, and that's pretty much the way that most people will try and sell themselves on LinkedIn. It's like that they're applying for a job application. It's as if the customer, are there saying, I need root canal surgery. I know I need root canal surgery. Who should I use? Okay, but that's not the case at all. You may
Right.
not know that you need root canal surgery. Your problem may be that you can't sleep and you can't find decent painkillers, and that you can't concentrate. You can't drive to work because uh, because you're in such pain, and you're looking for a decent painkiller because these ones haven't been working, and it's been like 3 nights in a row. And so to you don't know that you need root canal surgery at all.
Right.
You're looking for a painkiller, and that's what you're searching for. And so that's a question then of me getting in front of you, looking for what you're looking for, which is speaking the language that because you're looking at how do I focus at work? How do I drive? I wish I had a proper painkiller here.
Sure.
And then I'm going to come in and say, listen, the painkillers are not going to solve. That's not going to be a permanent solution for your problem.
So let's dive a little bit deeper there. I know, we talked back and forth earlier about, what to cover in this interview. And one of the things that came up was LinkedIn, because I know that's an area of expertise for you. And it's something that you do quite a bit of work with your clients. But, you mentioned, look, we can get into the mechanics of LinkedIn, but if you don't have your positioning and your message right before you go through that exercise, it's to no avail. Explain why that is.
Okay, so I have been on. I wouldn't say if you don't have it right beforehand. I wouldn't necessarily say it's an evolution, but I've been on LinkedIn since 2007, and it never did me anything at all. Never did me any good. And I made call it a tweak, a change, a change of approach about 4 months ago, and literally overnight started getting leads. Literally overnight, which was amazing. And so, yeah, so LinkedIn, as you know, is the largest professional services network in the world. It's online, and I think a lot of people have a bit of a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn, and I was there. I'm starting to like it a whole lot more. But yeah, the thing is that take the example of the dentist. And I mean, am I speaking to you in your language or in my language? Am I talking about here's what I do, here are my skills, here is all of the companies that I've worked for and the industries that I've worked in? Because in my IT background, I've got a very impressive the skill set and work history. Here are the publications that I've written for. That's not none of those are reasons why people are going to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And so really it's a question of finding where it is. As I say, I like the language of the two superpowers, um, but but starting to speak in you language, in you focused language, speaking to you, the client, not about me, the service provider, and really digging down into the pains and the problems that they have, and in the language that they use.
Okay. And so once you have some of that in place and you've understood some of that language, uh,
Mm.
can you go into, like, because I think everyone has, I always find it interesting to ask people what their LinkedIn approach is, because there's a lot of
Hmm.
similarities, but I find everyone has kind of their own unique way of doing things. And so I mean, I've got you here on the call, and I know you're a LinkedIn expert. So I got to ask, right? What is your LinkedIn workflow? How do you approach the platform?
Okay, so it's quite simple. Well, first, I do have a profile which probably doesn't look too much like I mean, it does have my work history like an online CV, but initially, it's the headline is extremely important. And so a lot of people would just say that in terms of their job title, like they may say I'm a SQL Server freelancer or something like that. I'm a software developer. I'm a lawyer. I'm an accountant. I'm a dentist, and that's okay to say that. But really, it's almost like a headline of an article, or it's like the subject line of an email that is going to lead people on to the next part. Am I going to open this email or not? Um, my strategy itself, yeah. So definitely, I've tidied up my profile itself very much and made it more of a dialogue, more of me talking to you as a potential client and talking about your problem. So taking that dentist analogy, I'm going to speak to you about, how tired you're feeling. You've got blurry eyes. You're in a lot of pain. You can't find the painkillers, um, and you've tried everything. Okay, so I'm not talking about my dentistry skills, but here's the other strategy, which has been super interesting for me, is that I will post very, very frequently. And a post, as opposed to an article, a post takes me like 2 minutes to write. And I had one post and it got like 27,000 views or 37,000 views. I can't even remember now. And what happens then? So for those who may not be so familiar with LinkedIn, what happens? So you and I are connected on LinkedIn, Ahmad. So the way that happens is that I have sent you an invitation. Hey, let's connect on LinkedIn, and you've accepted, or the other way around. Okay. And so you and I become first degree connections. Now, you are also connected to a whole lot of other people in the world who are not my connections. Okay. So I will post something about a particular problem. Hey, how terrible is it that these small town suppliers like you and I, when we're working with big companies, they don't pay us for 60 days or 90 days. That is ridiculous. And so I will just speak about that pain because I have a solution for that. and and so I'll speak about that pain. Now you might like my post, and then people who are connected to you will also like it. They may even comment on my post. Okay, so if you like, it's a friend of a friend. So a friend of yours has gone and commented on my post, and here's my strategy. It's very, very simple. So somebody, let's say, so you're in Canada, let's say somebody else in Canada who is a marketer or a copywriter or something like that has gone and commented on my post. I will then reach out and say, hey, thank you. Let's say it's Jake. Thanks, Jake. Thanks for the like about my post. I've looked at your profile. Hey, it's really good. I really like how you say this. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Very, very simple. Okay. And then Jake will probably accept my connection and becomes my first degree connection and is then starting to follow my posts. And that alone has led people to say, I put up a post like that about 2 weeks ago, and somebody within an hour who I had never heard of contacted me and said, I need your coaching.
And so again, these are, just to clarify, these are posts, not articles that we're talking about here, right?
Correct. Yeah. And so you can write articles. So what the difference is that a post was generally only text. So you don't have to be worrying about what image should I use and what headlines and what subheadings. It's also very short. I think maybe 1,200 characters. 1,200 characters is not 1,200 words, okay? So somebody who's very verbose like me, you really got to be efficient. And so a post may be just on a particular topic. So it's not selling my skills. Like, for example, I did a post just in the last 24 hours on uniqueness. Is it the whole idea of unique selling proposition? And I didn't really even know this language before I learnt it fairly recently. Not that recently, I suppose, but this whole idea of a USP, and I saw some sales people saying, no, you don't do that, or that's really not a great way to sell, and others are saying, yes, it is. So I simply asked the question, USP, is it still a thing? Is it still something that is worth mentioning? What is my uniqueness? And I got some responses from people across a few different industries, including the timber industry, and most of them saying, yes, here's how you define your uniqueness, or here's how I define mine. Now, you can see that if I'm working, say, with an IT person who is struggling to explain what it is that's different about them, then I will probably refer back to that post. I'll say, look, I actually know somebody in the timber industry, and his uniqueness is actually not unique when you go outside the timber industry, but what he's doing is this, which makes him absolutely stand out in timber sales. I know nothing about timber sales, but that's somebody who could become my client. It's just amazing.
Got it. And so what's happening is I'm actually looking at the post right now. So folks are commenting. Yeah. And they're liking, and when they comment or like, then their network sees that show up in their feed that so-and-so has commented or liked this post, and then that's how they discover you, and hopefully that's how a conversation then ensues. How often are you doing these kinds of posts?
Well, that was a really big mental hurdle for me, was that I'm actually posting daily. You don't need to, but I am posting every day. And the big challenge there was not so much thinking of topics, it was the embarrassment. Is that, am I really annoying? I must be annoying all of these people. And what I did was I actually wrote a post. I actually created a video, a little screencast video to say, here, if I'm getting annoying to you, here's what you can do. Here's how to stop following me. Do this. Press this button, and I made it completely for people that don't know the technology at all. Here is exactly how you can stop following me, okay? Because I understand I'm probably annoying you. And I don't think anybody stopped following me. In fact, I got more followers.
Yeah.
But that's a very important thing. With if you're actually pitching, that's not a great thing to do. Hey, here are my services. Do you want some? I'm a dentist. Here's my root canal surgery. Would you like to buy? What I would do is I would offer. I would say, hey, Ahmad, I've written this article. I've created this little webinar specifically on the question of uniqueness. I've written an article for let's say for IT specialists, let's say you're a SQL Server specialist selling to big companies, which is pretty much my field now. Is that I'm attracting people who have come out of corporate and are now selling back. They're out on their own, and they're now trying to get back into the big companies, but selling as consultants.
Mm-hmm.
And they're wondering, how do I get in front of these people? What do I say to them? How do I price it, and so on? And so that's what I'm able to help with. So what I would do is I would say, well, I've written an article on uniqueness, or I've written a post, or I've got a blog post, or watch this webinar. But what I would do is, instead of sending it to you, which might really annoy you, I might say, hey, I've noticed that you've commented about this uniqueness post. If you like, I've written an article. If you're interested, just let me know. I'll be only too happy to send it to you. So you're really asking for permission.
Hmm. And then if they say yes, you send the link, and then you've got a conversation.
Yeah, correct. Well, so for example, this podcast is now going to be a link. Well, I can share that with my network. Once that actually gets published, I can share that with my network. But after I share that with my network, maybe in a week or two afterwards, somebody new may come into my ecosystem, and they may be asking a question similar to what you've just asked. How do I do my positioning? I will say, look, as a matter of fact, I covered exactly that. Or what do I do to use LinkedIn to get leads? And I'll say, well, as a matter of fact, I covered that in this podcast. I'd be happy to share the link with you if you're interested. Okay. So you see how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So my next question is, and I'm sorry, I'm going down the LinkedIn rabbit hole because you've got too many good things to say. So, I've got to push further here. So, what about when it comes to new connections and kind of messaging to those new connections early on in the relationship? What's your approach there?
Yeah. So once again, I'm fairly how should I say? I certainly don't like to be pushy. But what I would do is, you would be surprised how many people are grateful that you've even read their profile. It's amazing how often people will say, "Wow, thank you, you've actually read my profile," and there'll always be something. The idea is you're always offering value. You're not saying, "Do you want my services?" You're saying, "Look, I see you're a speaker, for example. All right, or you're a podcaster, and that is critical to your business. Hey, Ahmad, why don't you add a background photo of you behind the microphone, or of you out on the stage? Because visually, here's how to do it, and visually, that's gonna make a really quick impression. Wow, this person is actually giving talks in front of audiences. Okay, that builds your authority. It's a very, very simple thing for you to fix that you may not have ever thought of. And so I'm offering value there. And now people are also following my posts. They will often comment, people that I've never heard of that will often comment, "Oh yeah, I've been following you on LinkedIn. I love what you write about. It's always an interesting topic," or something like that. The very interesting thing for me is that I'm reaching outside of my ecosystem, and so I would be getting in front of copywriters or consultants, or I've got some lawyers, I've got real estate agents, and I just sort of think I'm not writing about any of these topics, but they're getting attracted.
Right. And so let me ask you this, just on another note, because I'm scrolling through your profile and finding things that I want to talk to you about. Video is a big thing now, everywhere, and LinkedIn's making some major changes now and adding native video to the platform. What kind of role do you think that's going to play going forward?
I thought it would be big. I'm yet to be convinced of that. One of the big challenges for me on LinkedIn was that I had to unlearn everything that I'd learned about social media. It was just so counterintuitive. On Facebook, you really want to have images there. You want to have videos, but LinkedIn's algorithm, so how they decide what they decide to present to the world, at the moment seems to be favoring text only. And so I will do. So that's really good for me because I have done comparisons of if I do a post that has got text in it, only text, or I've got a post that has got links in it as well, or a post that's got images as well, a post that's got videos in it. And depends on the topic, but generally, as a broad brush statement, if you've got text only, that's going to do better. It's a very broad brush statement. But yeah, so I'm not seeing at the moment, I'm not seeing video, except with some exceptions. I would say if your video is a very deeply personal one, here I am on a Sunday afternoon. I'm in my home, and it's not slick. It's just unplugged, if you like, pulling back the curtain of your business and your life. Then that can certainly get a lot more attention. Yeah.
Well, why would that do better than a more professional, polished video?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I think people are so keen to connect humanly.
Oh,
It's yeah, and so the polished video is not typically going to do that. I find, for example, with LinkedIn ads, I find they always miss the mark, and I I just think, yeah, that they don't. I'm not really sure what it is, but I think people are so cynical, and they're so fed up with having people calling themselves gurus or ninjas or using any terminology that looks salesy. I think anything that you can do to pull back the curtain and to remove some of those barriers is going to be a great thing.
yeah.
Mm,
I'm seeing that a lot now. I think you're right,
mm,
because I've been very interested in Gary Vaynerchuk's kind of mantra around
yeah,
this. Document, don't
yeah,
create, right? And
yeah.
I'm seeing that in a couple of different ways. I'm seeing a lot of people doing what you're doing with this kind of daily or almost daily LinkedIn post, where you've
Mm,
got, and I think the strategy makes a ton of sense, especially now that LinkedIn articles, at least in my, in my observations, don't seem to be getting as much traction as they used to once that notification's been taken away. The
oh,
post is more
definitely.
immediate. It shows up in the feed, and you're more likely to get someone to consume it. So doing that, and then either tackling a really specific topic like you have in your posts, or
Mm,
sharing something very personal, something that's almost like you almost feel like you shouldn't be sharing it on LinkedIn. And that seems
okay.
to be standing out because it's almost a little bit unexpected.
So I have tended to avoid that on LinkedIn. My personality comes through, but generally I have avoided that on LinkedIn. But I I see both things happening. Um, it's a bit tricky, and interestingly, you mentioned about the articles. Sometimes I have written an article and also written a post to say, "Hey, here's this article." The post has performed extremely well, and the article has not. Exactly the same topic.
Yeah.
And so that really seems to indicate what LinkedIn themselves admitted a few months ago, which is that articles are really just more of a library if you want to keep something there, but not really for distribution. The idea is that you want to use posts. Now, I have actually broken that. I have actually been able to have some success with posts, with articles rather, but it's great news if you are writing and if you feel like you're not a writer because you don't need to write that much and you don't really have to overthink it. But what's been really fascinating for me is that this has put me in front of some markets that I had no idea uh, that I was even seeing. Like I've got some e-learning consultants, people who create e-learning courses, and got in touch. Somebody who was in my general ecosystem saw it, and then all of a sudden I started getting these e-learning consultants from Melbourne. And then at the same post, I started getting some writers from I think it was writers from Canada. I thought, well, what connections have I got with Canada? And I've got lots of them. And so, really, what you're doing is, and that's been really amazing for me. In fact, even with my networking, I do a lot of face-to-face networking as well, um, which I dreaded doing. And but what I've done was instead of going to technical conferences or going to where my clients are, I've been going in a different direction. And what I'll find is that people are then I'm then getting access to other people's audiences that that I never would have. And they're just so amazed to have a stranger come up and turn up. Wow, this is somebody who understands IT who's here at this procurement conference. Like, what gives? This is amazing. Yeah, and so or it's something in supply chain. Like, these are fields I knew nothing about. I've now published a book on procurement with a lady who's published like over 30 of them. How did that happen? Well, once again, it's similar to my LinkedIn strategy. You're actually reaching outside your own superpower. You're outside of your own circle into some other field that maybe you're not terribly comfortable with, and that's a great strategy in terms of your business as well.
Excellent. Well, Anthony, this has been really insightful, and I'm glad we got into the weeds because I found it particularly valuable. Anything you want to share, either about the superpower discussion or LinkedIn in general before we wrap up?
Well, I would simply say that if you dare, follow me on LinkedIn. You can always unfollow me, but there will be a chance. So you don't actually have to be creating new content yourself. Sometimes it's enough just to comment on somebody else's. And so you only have to write 1 or 2 sentences. And that alone is going to put you in front of a new audience. So it's a very, very simple strategy.
Well, Anthony, I will be following. And you know what? I may try something very similar. So stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We'll have a link to Anthony's LinkedIn profile in the show notes to this episode, but you can always look him up at Anthony English. And Anthony, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Ahmad.
Hey, it's Ahmed here again. Before I let you go, there are 2 things I want you to do. The first is, if you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe to the show on iTunes or Google Play by visiting forecast.fm and clicking on the relevant link. While you're at it, please do leave us a rating or a review because it helps more people discover the show. The second thing is, I want you to grab my free course on the 5 Ps of lead generation for professional services firms. Inside the course, you will get a step-by-step framework to help you generate a flood of new business for your firm. The course is 100% free of charge, and you can get immediate access at 5leadgen.com, and you can spell out 5 or use the number. Either one works. That's 5leadgen.com. Thanks for listening.